Beep, 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 beep. Urgent Jester update. Evening all. How the devil are we? Right, I've had a sleep. So, I have news. I'm going to be talking to Benjamin again shortly. That silky, smooth trouser snake has forced me to get out and get a pair of headphones, which we're going to need anyway for the studio. So I started purchasing things. Fantastic. And people for their generosity. Thank you very much indeed. Please do buy me coffee, etc. If you can. Let's keep things going. It's my birthday soon. I'm gonna hit you all up for some money. So here we go. Right. Breaking news number one. This is like a sort of more light piece, and then I'm going to talk to you about something else that's a bit more important. But just breaking news number one to start us off. Apparently broken by Pink News, who aren't very happy. I'm not surprised. Pink News. Nut jobs, right? Okay. Elon Musk's Twitter rolls back policy protecting trans users from misgendering and dead naming, right? Okay. In other words, everybody can tell the truth now and not worry about it, okay? So you can now, call men men and not have to panic, right? This is just cracking, isn't it? Right? So, it used to say we prohibit targeting others with repeated slurs or tropes. This includes misgendering, dead naming, and or dead naming transgender individuals, and it's gone. It's just gone. They've just taken it out. It's gone. So, there you go. Right, we can tell the truth again, he says with his fingers crossed, which is, I think, good news. Certainly something that, it shows progress, doesn't it, peeps? Progress that we can no longer have to lie. We no longer have to tell lies about what's in front of our face. We no longer have to tell lies about the truth of someone, so it makes them feel comfortable. As I said to my friend Napoleon and Wellington, who I was having dinner with the other night, now we don't have to do it anymore. Now, the other thing that's happened is that there's been a... I've got to find it now because I had it here a minute ago. You know what things are like. We get busy and I can't see things. So we've heard from Transgender Trend has actually put out a new article today, which it's talking about predominantly the stuff I've been rattling on about, which was the thing they've done for schools. The DFE guidance for schools has come along, and Transgender Trend are now saying, yeah, we're having none of it, right? Okay, so I'm going to take a visit to their website. Let's see what they've got to say. And it looks to me that they are as unhappy with this as I am. So, no child is born in the wrong body. That's the first thing. Let's start there before we begin with anything else. But they've made a new statement, which is now on Twitter. You can find it simply by searching Transgender Trend, so you'll have no problem finding that. And it's from an article on their website, which is linked directly from the Twitter. And I'll give you an idea of what's being said here. So what they've said is, and I think understandably so, that some details of the proposed Department for Education transgender guidance for schools have been published by the Sunday Times and the Telegraph. So these things maybe they've been leaked. Maybe they're just going, right, stick it out, see what happens, what the folks are going to say, what's going to be the general response to this. And they've said, rightly so, there are promising proposals here, but is it inconsistent on certain issues? Transgender Trend, which is run by Stephanie Davis-Rye, are a far more measured group and far more measured individual, Stephanie, than myself, right? So there are promising proposals here, but it is inconsistent. DFE guidance should start from the recognition that the gender affirmative model is a political demand, not a clinically developed evidence-based approach. The DFE must decide if schools are to allow either an activist approach or an approach in line with normal standards of safeguarding. It can't be a bit of both. So the gender affirmative approach that led to the harms at the Tavistock has become the established approach throughout society, including in schools. Schools have become a meeting ground of activism that directly targets children online and through school resources and is directed at teachers through training from such groups as Stonewall. Schools are institutions of education and learning. Gender affirmation, whether through the social transition of children or the teaching of gender identity as fact, is not education but indoctrination into a belief. The purpose of schools is not to provide gender-affirming care. It is not children's job to provide gender-affirming care to classmates as a condition of their education. A school should create an environment of acceptance. It is not the school's job to provide validation. Schools are not centres of gender transition, and children are not the foot soldiers of a political movement. That's fairly, have at it. and good for them, right? That's what we need to say. The draft proposals suggest that the government is tightening up guidance on some of the most contentious issues, but still trying to please everyone. Now, I've mentioned it more than once. This is not a both sides issue. There aren't two sides. Safeguarding, that's it. They're trying to please everyone. If guidance is confusing and inconsistent, it will please no one. Well, I'm not in the business of pleasing people. I'm in the business of ensuring that safeguarding takes place so that children aren't pulled into this cult. If it happens, it will please me. Does that count? I suppose it does. Right, please a few of you out there, hiding in Jesterland. The draft proposal suggests that the government is tightening up guidance on some of the most contentious issues. We welcome the proposal that children will not be permitted to share changing or shower facilities with pupils of the opposite sex. Can you believe I'm having to say that? That this must also be the case for toilets and dormitories, for the dignity and privacy of all pupils and the safety of girls. Safeguarding of girls cannot be compromised by any lack of clarity in this area. We also welcome guidance that boys are not permitted to take part in girls' sports, but there is no justification for relaxing the rules around non-contact sports. It's just, their sports are split by sex. It just needs to say that. Fairness, equality and inclusion is achieved in sport by the exclusion of males from the female category. It is not achieved by exclusion of girls from podium places and awards by boys who identify as girls, or by demoralising and demotivating girls so that they self-exclude from their own sports. Guidance from the DFE should be clear and unequivocal on these points. We then move in the Transgender Trend article to social transition. The DFE must not leave this issue up to individual schools, but provide clear guidance as a framework within which schools can adapt their existing safeguarding and behaviour management practices. Both CAS and the NHS interim service specification were very cautious about social transition. In essence, the conclusion was that evidence is lacking, just to say the least. In any case, it is outside the remit of the CAS review and NHS policy reach to decide on policy affecting other children and their rights. This is the job of the Department for Education, which they singularly seem to be failing to do. Gender self-ID is an activist demand. Yep, it has no place in schools, which should be politically neutral. Children may self-identify as anything they like, but teachers and other children cannot be compelled to agree with that child's belief. You know, because occasionally they do that, don't they? I'm a helicopter. All right, yeah, all right, love. I'm a giraffe. Yeah. It's a load of hydraulics, or hydraulics rather, but you know, I'm a giraffe. They do these sorts of things, right? So, children's self-ID, the activist demand. I love that. Use of preferred pronouns is another political activist demand. That has to stop. Schools shouldn't be doing it. Teachers shouldn't be doing it. Nobody should be doing it anywhere. It's a political, ideological fealty statement, for God's sake. It's another political activist demand. For those of you who don't get the pronoun thing and why it's crap, right, go and look for an article called Pronouns Are Rohypnol. It's brilliant. Go look. Right? Go look. Google is your mate. Have a go and look, right? It's another political activist demand, this idea of preferred pronouns. So, children should not be pulled into this kind of political activism in schools or be compelled to unknowingly serve an activist agenda pushed most often by teachers with their lanyards for the trans people and lanyards, rainbows for the LGBTQI hands, knees and bumps of daisy people, who don't, by the way, represent gays and lesbians. They're nothing to do with us. Allowing a policy of preferred pronouns can enable children to hold teachers to ransom and to bully their peers. You remember I did a video earlier on about the fact they said, oh, if you just transition, we won't bully you anymore. Really, it's what it is, yeah? A school cannot allow one child, but not others, to dictate the use of pronouns by their teachers and peers. This is unworkable in schools. It's forced speech, as far as I'm concerned. You know, don't stop it. We're not doing it, okay? Use of preferred pronouns is discriminatory towards neurodiverse, learning disabled, or children with speech and language difficulties, and those with protected beliefs. Okay, transgender trend. Like a bullet in the old song, wasn't it? Like a bullet. Right. The gender affirmative approach they move on to talk about now. Social transition is a key aspect of the gender affirmative approach. This is not a clinically developed best practice approach, but a very recent capitulation to activist demands. It is based on a belief in gender identity and unevidenced an incoherent idea about inner gendered feelings. Oh, me gender chakras are screwed up today. Walking around with their gender chakras out of joint. Right. Educational professionals, the gender affirmative model is not in line with normal standards of paediatric care, as referenced in the CAS interim report, and teachers and anybody else in schools are not qualified to make that diagnosis of that illness. Okay? Education professionals should not feel under pressure, as health professionals have, to socially affirm children against normal professional standards of practice. They then go on to quote from various parts of the CAS report that makes an interesting read, which you can have a look at. Again, you can find it via their Twitter or it's on their website. And then they talk about the risks, and this is very interesting. The Tavistock has since published the results of a study which found that there are no mental health benefits to social transition. I love it. And they've got all the things you need to read to follow it up, just so that you can, convince yourself it's real if you happen to want to believe this nonsense. Another recent study in Melbourne found that social transition during adolescence was associated with greater odds of adverse mental health outcomes. It's iatrogenic. Who's been saying that for a while? Everyone! It's iatrogenic. It is the damage. It causes the damage. The whole idea is a parasitical mental illness in form. The risk of social transition are outlined here by clinical psychologists, primary age children. A childhood is not reversible in adolescence when a teenager says they're transgender. So we've got more resources there for you on the Transgender Trend website, thank you Stephanie and the team, to look at. If a child is experiencing genuine distress, that is a matter for the professionals and should be dealt with in exactly the same way as the school would manage any other child with psychological mental issues, health issues. Policy in this area should not undermine the unambiguous advice for schools and colleges as set out in statutory DFE guidance that in relation to mental health issues, schools and college staff are not expected to and should not diagnose mental health conditions or perform mental health interventions. This is what happens when you make a mental illness into an identity. And people can adopt into it, right? Which is what they're doing with others as well. The self-diagnosing. I've got, ADHD and I've got ACLU, HMRC. I've got all those things. That's what they do, isn't it? I must be ill. There's something wrong with me. God, I need that victimhood. I need it. So, intervening in a child's development in an area where teachers are unqualified puts teachers at professional risk and also risks making mental health issues worse for the children, you think? Brilliant stuff, right? Really brilliant. And then they're talking about the impact on other pupils of this. This is a phenomenal response and a phenomenal article, which is excellently resourced, and I would suggest is a useful resource for anyone who wishes to approach a school and say, here, stop it with this crap. Now, the worrying thing for me, and you've probably been watching some of this stuff unfold on Twitter since the Times leaked this stuff, is that we've got numbers of teachers, including a deputy head teacher dressed like, Cruella de Vil, saying, we're ignoring it. We're just going to ignore it. We're not going to bother. Thanks for the guidance, but we're not taking your guidance. I think it's a start. I don't think it's a particularly good start, but I think that it's getting us closer to the point where they're going to make a complete list of what is and what is not allowed to be taught in schools, and then we can write the whole lot down and we'll stop it dead by passing primary legislation. Now, I don't want that to happen, but I think that's probably what's going to happen. And the other thing that it's important that you remember, and this is very, very important, is that it's not just that they're teaching this, they're practicing critical social justice, queer theory, gender identity, theology, all the other stuff that comes with it. Teachers are practicing this in schools with the kids, right? And they are deranging them, absolutely deranging them. So we've got to be ready to deal with a lot of deranged young people as they come out the arse end of what used to be our school system. So yeah, a good start. Let's keep moving. Let's keep the pressure on. Let's not take our foot off the pedal as of yet. Thank you very much, Transgender Trend, for a tremendous response. And go have a read because it's worth it. I'll see you later, folks. Have a lovely evening.